I'm pleased to join the Organization of Iranian American Communities to commemorate the anniversary of Iran's 1979 revolution. The revolution may have started with talk of democracy, but will ultimately force the Iranian people to live under an autocratic and corrupt regime that targets its own people and is the chief state sponsor of international terrorism from Syria to Lebanon to Gaza to Europe and South America and across the globe. We have often heard this story firsthand from our neighbors in Los Angeles, the Iranian American community, particularly the San Fernando Valley, many of whom fled to escape the repression of this regime. Despite originating humanity's very first human rights document, the Cyrus Cylinder, the Iranian people have faced abysmal human rights conditions since this day, 43 years ago. The world should not forget the mass murders carried out by the Iranian regime in 1988. Khomeini issued the bloody order to, quote, annihilate the enemies of Islam immediately. Executions of thousands continued for months, with hundreds of people hanged each and every day before being buried in a mass, unmarked grave. Today we know that as many as 30,000 political prisoners had their lives taken from them, taken because they supported the dream of a free Iran. President Raisi, his human rights record has been even worse than his predecessors, with executions rising dramatically. According to Amnesty International, Iran is the most prolific user of capital punishment in the region and second worldwide only after China. For too long, the Iranian people have been deprived of their fundamental freedoms, for which reason they rejected dictatorship in 1979 and oppose religious tyranny today. And that's why I became the chief sponsor of House Resolution 118, expressing support for the Iranian people's desire for a democratic, secular, and non-nuclear republic of Iran. As long as I am in Congress, I will continue to fight for the dream of a free, democratic Iran. Thank you for standing with me to move toward that dream.
For over 40 years, the Iranian people fought for fundamental freedoms and have rejected a monarchic dictatorship and a religious autocracy. In recent years, protests hostile to the Iranian regime spread like wildfire, reaching 100 cities across the nation. Regrettably, lethal force was used by Iranian security forces, killing an estimated 1,500 fellow citizens. The Iranian regime is in constant violation of the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In 1988, the Iranian regime killed their own due to differing viewpoints. In 1999, 2009, and 2017, political protests were held and Iranian citizens' voices were violently silenced by the regime. It is my belief that it should be the policy of the United States to investigate and hold Iranian officials accountable for the extrajudicial killings of Iranian dissidents. To those who continue holding legitimate and peaceful demonstrations against an oppressive and corrupt regime, I commend and support you. I will continue to work with my colleagues on the House Armed Services Committee and other members of Congress to push for an investigation into the disgraceful actions of Raisi and his involvement in the 1988 massacre. He must be held accountable for crimes against humanity. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you all today.
Hello, I'm Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. I represent the 18th Congressional District in Texas, and I'm a proud co-sponsor of the House Resolution 118, the resolution that focuses on the absolute necessity for democracy in Iran. It is so very important to promote the people who love democracy. And in this anniversary of the 1979 popular anti-dictatorial revolution, where people stood up to be able to fight for democracy, we want to say that it is important to receive that democracy and to be able to speak against the massacre of 1988, the political prisoners, the suppression of peaceful demonstrations in 1999 and 2009, 2017 and 2019. When does it ever end? It is when good people say something. And for far too long, Iran and the people have suffered from the lack of fundamental freedoms, but they're fighting for their freedoms. Iranians deserve the right to vote and to be confident that there is a democracy for them and their families. That is what we stand here and support. We want a peaceful Iran. And we're calling now for democratic, secular, non-nuclear Iran. We want a democratic Iran where the ballot box is important and as well social justice is lifted up. So I want to thank you for having me, because all the years that I've had the privilege of knowing Iranian Americans, I've known their fight for freedom, their fight for a democratic Iran, and their fight for their families, and for the suppressed to be relieved, and for the prisoners that are peaceful and only want democracy to be freed. Thank you.